I am not the best parishioner, but I am the best protector of the parishioner. I heard that quote years ago attributed to Winston Churchill. I haven't been able to verify it, but I think that quote could apply to President Donald Trump. Us Christians that support President Trump, we don't try and say he's the best Christian, but we know he was the best president for Christians in our lifetime. And I'll be 59 this year, and I've been a political nerd since I'm a teenager. And President Trump has done more for Christian values as president with his policies than any president in my lifetime. And I've had several people ask me to make this video to explain why. When he ran last time, I broke it up into a couple videos, kind of like the Christian view of why we vote for him, and also blue collar guys, why blue collar guys that have never voted in their lifetime voted for him twice, and they're going to vote for him a third time. But being a blue collar guy, I work about 70 hours a week. I don't have time to make a bunch of videos these days, so I'm going to put it all in one, and you'll see how protecting religious freedoms helps everyone. So, again, Catholics, blue-collar Catholics like myself, and evangelicals who support Trump, we have the same values. We have the same morals. We have the same values. We differ on theological issues, and I always challenge them on this channel with the scriptures. But today I'm going to talk about what we have in common and why we will vote for President Trump for a third time. Yesterday, a subcommittee headed in the House, a House subcommittee, I believe it's the Judiciary Committee headed by Jim Jordan, showed us and questioned Treasury officials why the Treasury was urging banks and financial institutions to let them know when Americans were purchasing Bibles. And they said it was all in an effort to weed out extremists. So they think people of faith are extremists, the Biden administration, that is. And we remember a few months back, a Senate had a committee meeting where they questioned FBI officials for sending undercover agents into Catholic churches to look for extremists, because they thought Catholics were extremists. You know, and sometimes I have my evangelical friends say, well, you know, Joe Biden is a Catholic. And my response is always, going to church doesn't make you a Christian any more than going to McDonald's makes you a hamburger. You can say you can say who you are, you know, I'll watch what you do, you know. When Bush did this right after 9/11, when we knew these were Muslim extremists that attacked us on 9/11, the media was outraged. But the media doesn't really cover this. They don't think it's a big deal. Because on a recent poll, 99% of the media has never voted Republican. In the past, you know, I've watched these polls for 20 years. It's always been like 90%. Now it's like 99% have never voted Republican. So they have an agenda. If you think you're watching NBC, ABC, CBS, and you're watching fair news, you're not. You're watching a liberal network that's going to slant the news. President Trump appointed Sam Brownback as an international religious ambassador. Sam Brownback was a former two-time governor of Kansas. He's a convert to Catholicism. He was an on-fire evangelical, and then he became a Catholic. Kind of like me, but I'm what you call a revert. I was born Catholic, joined the Navy, had a very radical experience with Jesus Christ where he transformed my life. And I followed Jesus in the evangelical tradition until I was older and came back to the Catholic Church. So you would call me a revert. But Sam Brownback was a Catholic convert, very devout to the faith. And in 2011, Rick Perry, an evangelical Christian governor of Texas, called every other governor, the 49 other governors in the country, to a day of prayer. And the only governor to come in person, to fly down there, was Sam Brownback. Every other governor sent a video, including then South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley. They just sent a video themselves. Sam Brownback thought it was important to be there in person to pray for this nation. And when Sam Brownback took over that position, you know, you have lifelong government officials that work in all these organizations. They said this guy took this position more serious and did more and was more active than any other ambassador. See, because that was one of the great things about Trump. He always picked people that were good at what they did. You know, Obama had all these PhD eggheads who never worked a day in their lives making policy. Trump had guys that actually, you know, if you were going to run energy, you knew about energy. If you were going to run defense, you knew about defense. If you were going to run the religious ambassadorship, you're going to be a religious dude. And one of the great things President Trump did was reinstate the Mexico City policy. Now, I actually had the guy who negotiated that policy under Ronald Reagan, former presidential candidate, Dr. Alan Keyes. I had him on this show, Blue Collar and a Scholar. It's a segment I do when a blue collar guy like me talks to a scholar. And Dr. Alan Keyes, one of my favorite guests, I look forward to having him on again, explain the Mexico City policy. And the reason he negotiated, because at the time he was the Assistant Secretary of State under Ronald Reagan. And he said he became very good friends with Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan was the real deal. What you seen on the camera was the real Ronald Reagan. He wasn't, the media likes to say, oh, he's just an actor. He said, no, he was the real deal. And the Mexico City policy said, money we're going to give these countries to help in population development and, help them protect their people and family planning. Not a penny can be spent on abortion, or we're going to take it back. And of course, the Bushes kept that, but of course, Obama got rid of that and said, yeah, go ahead, use it to kill babies. But then Trump came, and not only did he reinstate the Mexico City policy, he expanded it. See, before Trump, it was like $600 million that we said we couldn't be used for abortion. He said, no, none of this money, $9 billion can be used. A lot of lives saved. And Dr. Alan Keyes told me an interesting thing on that interview. He said that the media didn't report, of course, because the media was against it, that all the Muslim leaders in Mexico City that signed into this agreement thanked him. Because they said under Carter, they were kind of pressured, to allow abortion in their country because they needed this money. So, the first day of Joe Biden's administration, he rescinded that. He got rid of that. First day. That was his priority. His priority was to kill babies. Trump also backed funding. He blocked funding to Planned Parenthood. Now, a lot of people say, well, they still got funding. Yeah, there's only so much a president can do. He's not a king. He's just the president. But what he could withhold and the way he did it was, well, if you fund Planned Parenthood, we're not going to, give you this. So kind of like negotiated. It wasn't like a set in stone, boom, Planned Parenthood isn't getting any. But they lost a lot of money. Some estimates were like $500 million under Trump, maybe, and some estimates even more. But of course, Joe Biden reversed that and actually gives Planned Parenthood more government money than we've ever had. For 50 years, we've heard politicians, Republicans say they're going to reverse Roe v. Wade, and for 50 years they've done nothing. And then when Donald Trump was running, he said, yeah, it looks like I'll be able to appoint 2 or 3 Supreme Court justices. Turned out it was 3. And he said, I'm only going to appoint originalist judges rather than activist judges that Obama appointed and even Bush appointed some. They acted like they're originalists and turned out to be activists. And if you're not familiar with those terms, an originalist judge looks at the Constitution and seeing what the original founders originally meant it to be. And they just interpret it. That's their job. It's people we elect Congress to change the law, change laws. It's not for the judges to change laws. They're just supposed to interpret the law. What does the law mean? Well, an activist judge will look at the law and say, well, maybe that made sense 200 years ago, but it doesn't make sense today. So I think it should say this. So this is how I'm going to make my judgment based on what I think the Constitution should say. Well, based on the original content of the Constitution, every legal scholar, including former Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, said, Roe v. Wade is horrible law. It doesn't make any sense. It was all political. It was a political move by activist judges appointed by by presidents who wanted it changed. And Donald Trump was right. He told us the truth. He kept his promise. He appointed 3 originalist judges. Everybody laughed at him when he said it was going to get overturned. And guess what? It was overturned. And then it went back to the states, just like it originally was before Roe v. Wade. And the liberal states allow it. And conservative states like Florida that I'm in put common sense bans. We have the heartbeat law here in Florida. If you could hear a heartbeat, you can't kill the baby. So it's approximately 6 weeks. I think it's 6 weeks ban in the state of Florida. That was Donald Trump that did that. Donald Trump did that. Evangelicals love Israel. Catholics love peace. Donald Trump was able to obtain peace in the Middle East by being loyal and protecting Israel. He had gotten the Abraham Accords signed. And if you're not familiar with that, he had sent his son, who's a Jew, Jared Kushner, to Israel and to the Middle East, in the Middle East, to negotiate peace deals. And the media, again, laughed at Trump and said, we haven't had a peace deal in 50 years. There's no way you're going to get a peace deal. Lo and behold, he got 4 peace deals, put them together, called the Abraham Accords. He made peace between Israel and Sudan, Israel and Bahrain, Israel and UAE, Israel and Morocco. Saudi Arabia was very close, and I believe when he gets elected this year, they'll sign on very quickly. And amazingly enough, for 50 years, again, my entire lifetime, like I said, I'll be 59 this year, my entire lifetime, every single president in my lifetime has promised to put the American embassy in Israel into Jerusalem and recognize Jerusalem as their capital. But every president lied and didn't do it because they were too scared. There was too much political pressure, thinking, you're going to get the Arabs and the Muslims upset and you're going to cause a war. Donald Trump's the only president that said it and did it. I believe he did it his first year. The Israelis were so happy that we finally recognized Jerusalem as their capital that they named town squares, bridges, roads, railroad tracks after Trump. You got Trump Square, you got the Trump Bridge. They love Donald Trump in Israel. And did it create World War III? No, it did not create World War III. It showed that Israel was stronger, so you better not attack them because they have the strongest ally they ever had in America in Donald Trump. Number 2, he worked not by sending bombs like Biden's doing. He worked by negotiating with Saudi Arabia and all these other Middle Eastern countries that were very, not in love with Israel. I think Trump, that's a Trumpian way of saying it. And he did it by money. We give all these countries monies. And he tells Saudi Arabia, we're not going to be giving you money unless you make nice with Israel. In fact, if you make nice with Israel, if you work with Israel as a friend and an ally, we'll supply you weapons to defend yourselves against these Houthis that are our enemy and your enemy. And we're going to stop giving money to Iran like Obama was giving huge amounts of money to Iran. And Iran was turning around giving them to the Houthis who were attacking Saudi Arabian troops in Yemen. He was also giving money to Hamas and Hezbollah, who were attacking Israel. So Trump said, no, we're not gonna give a penny to Iran. And also, Obama was giving $100 million a year to Hamas, just straight up giving it to him. And no, we're not giving a penny to Hamas either, because they're not using it to feed their people. They're using it to make bombs to kill Israeli children. So that's why you had peace in the Middle East. It was very simple. And on top of that, other leaders were afraid to get Iran and these countries in the Middle East mad because we were dependent on their oil. We said, we don't need their oil. We have enough oil in America. We're going to become oil independent. So not only am I going to open up lands for Americans to drill, but I'm going to cut the regulations and the red tape and the taxes that makes it hard to get loans to start drilling. And he unleashed the sleeping giant, and America became energy independent for the first time. So it affected blue collar guys like me economically when I, go get $1.80 gas rather than under Biden, I'm paying over $3. It had a big effect on me, but it had a greater effect on world peace. You see, because not only weren't we directly giving money to Iran, but we were keeping Iran from making money. Iran used to get like $100 a barrel for gas, for oil. Well, once we became energy independent, we flooded the market with supply and demand. The price went down where they were only getting $20 a barrel. And we put an embargo on them. We made it where they couldn't legally sell oil, and they get around it. They'll sell it to India and India will sell it. But oil was so cheap, they really weren't making enough money to help their own people, never mind fund all these terrorists around the world they were doing. Biden comes in, reverses all that 100%. And again, they're funding all the terrorists. And he starts giving Hamas and Hezbollah money, right off the get-go too. So war in the Middle East, thanks to Joe Biden. But like I said, Christians believe that we should strive for peace. And under Donald Trump, we had peace. Even in Europe, there was peace. Experts on both sides of the aisle, whether they're Democrat or Republicans, there's no doubt Russia would have never invaded Ukraine if Donald Trump was president. Number one, Russia's sole source of income is oil. And under Trump, oil was cheap. So they didn't have enough money to fund an army to go in there. That's number one. Number two, Trump was a good negotiator. He talked nice, and when you're negotiating with someone, you respect them, and he would always give compliments to Putin, like a good salesman would do if he's talking to someone. But Mike Pompeo said he was there when Donald Trump told Putin, if you ever think of invading Ukraine, and remember, he invaded Georgia under Bush, and then he took over Crimea under Obama, and Obama did nothing about it. Bush really didn't do too much about it either. Trump, on the other hand, says, if you decide to go into Ukraine when I'm president, I'll drop a nuke on Moscow. And Pompeo said, Putin looked at him funny, like, I don't know if this guy's serious. He said Putin, probably 95% of Putin thoughts were like, nah, he's just joking. But 5% said this crazy son of a might drop a bomb on us. Trump had respect around the world. He had respect. He knew we were the big dog, and he acted like it. Biden's running around like a dog with his tail between his legs because he's beholden. And there's so much evidence, and I've made many videos about this. I'm going to get so much evidence that he's bought and paid for by Russia, China, Ukraine. He's the most corrupt politician we ever had in this office. I mean, the trail, 50 years I've watched this guy. He's the biggest grifter in Washington. So there's only so much he could do, even if he wanted to. But does he want to? Bob Gates, the former Secretary of Defense under Barack Obama, who worked closely with Joe Biden, said Joe Biden has been wrong about every national security policy in the last 50 years. Every single decision everything Joe Biden has ever said, 50 years as a senator, about national security, he's been wrong. According to his president, Obama's Secretary of Defense. That is pretty damning. And it's true. If you just look at, if you're a political nerd like me, you could see where this guy just is not in tune with what's right and wrong in the world. He's not up for the job. Even before he had all these, mental issue, aging issues with dementia and Alzheimer's he wasn't even up to the job. Now he's definitely not. Now he's just a puppet, who's ever behind the scenes moving him. He's just obviously could barely get a coherent sentence out. So not only did that oil independence have the effect on world peace, I mean, just think about it. Peace in Europe, peace in the Middle East. Even, remember under Obama, Kim Jong-un in North Korea was shooting bombs like every month. The first month, Trump's president, he tweets out, Rocket Man, you shoot another bomb, you shoot another missile, and we'll make North Korea a parking lot. That's another thing blue collar guys like about this guy. He just talks straight. The media was appalled. But guess what? Rocket Man stopped shooting missiles, and they kind of had a friendship. Again, he was trying to smooth them, negotiate it, and he showed him a film. He's like, dude, you can make North Korea rich, because he knew Kim Jong-un was all about himself. He had an ego, he had pride. He's like, instead of having your people as slaves, you could have them love you freely. We could put up condos on the beach. This could become, just give up your nukes. That's all we're asking. Just give up your nukes. And he didn't get it. Maybe the next 4 years he could, So we didn't have to worry about North Korea. We didn't have to worry about China because, when people are broke, they don't want to fight. And for years, us blue collar guys have seen our jobs go to China. For years, we've seen how, they charge us 20% tariffs on cars we send to China, and we charge them 0. We actually give them tax breaks. And the grift is so big in Washington. And this is when we say the swamp, this is what we mean. There's so many businesses that do business in China, and they give up a lot of their freedoms and rights as Americans over there just to make money. And then they, in turn, give these politicians money to run. And like, dude, you gotta do this for China. So for years, we've seen China just freaking taking such advantage of us. And Trump stopped it. He stopped it, And everyone's like, oh, he's not for free trade. No, he's for free trade, but let's be fair, When it's fair, there's no one that could beat Americans in production. There's no countries that work as hard as us. I'm telling you. And so we didn't have to worry about China. We were getting wealthier. They were getting poorer. And this is how Ronald Reagan defeated the Soviet Union. When he came into office, his Secretary of Defense said, what's your plan to contain the Soviet Union? He said, contain it, we're going to defeat it. And the Secretary of Defense, I think it was Caspar Weinberg at the time, said, I've never heard anybody say that. This guy was like a lifelong Washington dude. He's like, most presidents just want to contain it. How are you going to defeat the Soviet Union? He says, well, for every nuke we make, it costs us $1. It costs them $3 because our technology is like 30 years advanced to them. And he was right. So we broke them by building our military. They tried to keep up with us and they just went broke. And this was Trump's philosophy and it was working. We're not going to send anybody. He was the most dovish president. By that I mean he was the president that least wanted to go to war than any other president. In fact, he's the only president in the last 20 years that didn't get us into a new war. Biden got us into 2 new wars. And if you don't think troops are in Israel or Ukraine, American troops, you're naive. Trust me, you're naive. Delta, SEALs, Rangers, they've been there. Trust me. I had a Delta Force, I did have some notes. I haven't looked at them in a while. I had Delta Force operator and author of the book American Badass, Dr. Dale Comstock, on this program. And he told me Biden has made our country so weak that he told his son, who's a Green Beret, to get out because he's not fighting for American values anymore. He's fighting for communist values. And guys like that, when they were in, there would have been guys over there in Israel and in Ukraine and other places you don't know about. So this oil independence, not only did he make it less expensive to drill by getting rid of the regulations, lowering the taxes, encouraging financial institutions to fund drilling projects, and the environmentalists are like, oh, he's gonna make our environment so toxic. Well, number one, America has got the cleanest way of drilling than Iran, Venezuela, all these countries that Biden's begging to produce more oil because he's tanking in the polls over this. They don't care about the environment when they drill. And the same amount of drilling is going to be done. It's just who's getting paid for it, Americans or America's enemies? That's the only question. They're not going to stop drilling. But under Donald Trump, the 4 years he was in, based on the EPA, which is no lover of Republicans, we had the cleanest air and the cleanest water. Scientifically, objectively tested, the cleanest water and the cleanest air in the history of the United States. Because as advances in technology come, not only can we dig deeper and get more oil out, we can dig cleaner. And that's what was happening under Donald Trump. And not only did that affect the price of gas, but it affected everything. You know, I'm a truck driver. So my company is making more profit because it costs less to fuel. I fuel up my truck every day with diesel fuel. Everything was cheaper. Everything, you go to Walmart and 90% of what you buy has petroleum from oil. So if oil is cheap, everything is cheap. It's a ripple effect, you know? It's a ripple effect. And then on top of that, he gave us the biggest tax break in history. I had a family relative say, oh, I didn't see, my daughter didn't see any tax cuts. And I read him literally, you can read every single tax category got a cut in taxes. Mine was 3%. You say, well, 3% ain't much. But our companies got a huge tax cut. I was working for Borden. I left and I came back. I left during COVID and just recently came back. But Borden Dairy, my boss was a New York City Democrat liberal. But he called me in the office and he had me sign a paper saying I was getting a $2 an hour raise just right off the bat. And that's not our annual raise. That was right off the bat. And the letter said based on the Trump tax cuts they were making such great profit, they wanted to share it with us. My friend was a truck driver for Tropicana selling juice. He got a $2,000 bonus, and they get paid commission. So his commissions went up because business got better. Everything was better under Trump. I said Trump needs to make a video, show Biden's America, how homelessness is rampant and the misery in San Francisco and New York City and all these Democrat-run states, gloom and gray, Biden's America. And then have the national anthem playing with bright lights and fireworks in the back and Trump's America, where guys like me got up, filled my gas tank, $1.80 a tank, went to a job I was getting, I only got a 3% pay cut, but blue collar wages under Donald Trump went up 9%. So that's like a 12% increase, where now it's the reverse. Wages are stagnant, inflation is high, so it's like blue collar guys like me went back to the old ways. See, before Donald Trump, for 30 years, blue collar guys didn't get a wage hike if you based it on inflation. It was always like this. Inflation would go up, we get a little wage hike, inflation would go up. Under Donald Trump, blue collar guys were doing great. Had so many people in stores, I'm delivering milk, and I'd have the Coke guy manager say, hey man, you want to come over here? We just, we're paying our guys more, the Pepsi guy. Things were great under Joe Biden. I'm sorry. Come on, man, under Donald Trump. And I can go on, and I'm sure there's things I forgot. If I did, please put in the comments. Every time I do these, I say, oh, I forgot to tell them about this. But there is no doubt in my mind, Donald Trump is the best president I've ever had in my 58 3/4 of a year's life on this planet. So if the media's got you convinced that he's something he's not, just look at the facts, you know? I always say it doesn't matter who's right, it matters what's right. And they could get you to dislike this guy, and you could dislike him. But you know what? If I need brain surgery and there's a brain surgeon I dislike, but he's the best brain surgeon, and there's a brain surgeon that I love, he's funny, but he's like, patients die under his care, I'm going to go to the brain surgeon I dislike. And that's how I vote. But I happen to like Donald Trump. I know he's not perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. You know, these politicians that act perfect, they're acting because their whole goal in life. You know, Bill Clinton said he decided in high school he wanted to be president. Obama in college decided he wanted to be president. These guys are planning for president their whole life. Trump is who you get. The good, the bad, the ugly. You know? And, they say he doesn't like immigrants. He's married to an immigrant. His parents were immigrants, you know? And you can see his policy on the border was correct. We didn't say we didn't want immigrants. We just want legal immigration. America allows more legal immigration by far than any country in the world. But when you just open the border, you don't know who's coming over. They're catching people on the terrorist list. You know, the media is downplaying this, but one terrorist coming over could blow up a World Trade Center type of building. And we're catching dozens of them. And there's a lot we're not catching. And under Donald Trump, the border was secure again for the first time in our lifetime because dirty little secrets, Republicans don't want the Republican establishment don't want the border secure as much as the Democrats. Republicans, they have their rich donors that like the cheap labor, so they want the immigrants to come over. The Democrats want it because they think it's going to be voters for them. You know, this is why everybody was against Trump. And that's one of the things Dr. Alan Keyes, who spent a lifetime in politics and has a PhD in political science, and was a professor at Harvard, I believe. I know he got his PhD from Harvard. He might not have been a professor. I might be thinking of another guest I'm trying to get on. But even he said it. When I asked him straight up, I said, Dr. Alan Keyes, I know you're good friends with Ronald Reagan, and I know you love him the way I love him. And he gave me some funny Ronald Reagan stories. You can check it out, see if we get it pop up here, my interview with him. But I said, who is the best president in your lifetime? He said, well, I would always say Ronald Reagan. He said, but the things that Donald Trump accomplished are amazing in itself. But then when you add to it that he had the media against him, lying about him, he had the intelligence communities lying and against him. He had the Democratic Party, and he had most of the Republican establishment against him. For him to get what he got done is miraculous. So I would have to say, I don't know if he actually said it, but he led me to believe that he thought Donald Trump was the best president as well. So I'm not telling you who to vote for. I just want to let you know. And especially, I wanted to say this at the beginning, but I forgot. If you're someone that hates Donald Trump, you need to watch this even more, to see where we're coming from. Because a lot of people are like, how could you guys love Trump so much? This is why, because he's done so much. So he was the only president ever to lose money. When he became, his 4 years, he lost, I think his net worth, they said it went down like $500 million. Where when Biden became president, or when he became vice president, he became a millionaire, and now his net worth went up. Obama wasn't a millionaire, now he's worth like $100 million. Clinton, Bush was already rich but got richer, but Clinton was broke when he went in that White House, and now he's worth like $150 million. All these people go in the White House and become millionaires. Trump goes in the White House and loses millions. Trump was the only president that didn't take a salary. Their salary is like $400,000 a year now. He gave his salary to charity. Mostly Christian charities every year. He wasn't in for the money. He don't need the money. He's almost 80 years old, billionaire. His family's set. He's not doing it for the money. And here's a story that, growing up in Jersey, knowing Donald Trump, when he used to hang out with the rappers and Mike Tyson and Don King, and, before everyone tried to paint him as racist, we knew he wasn't a racist. When Jesse Jackson gave him an award for helping minorities, and the Black Businessmen Association in New York City gave him a standing ovation. The real Donald Trump, not the Donald Trump the media wants you to believe he is. But that Donald Trump, back in the day, had a flat tire in New York City. And a blue-collar guy said he drove by, and he recognized Trump out there in his overcoat, and it was cold, and it was rainy. And he said, Mr. Trump, what's the matter? He goes, I got a flat tire waiting for somebody to come here and change it. And he said, I'll change it for you. He goes, yeah, you would do that for me? He's like, yeah, sure. It'd take me a minute. He said, yeah, I worked all day. I'm dirty anyway. Changes Trump's flat tire. Trump asked the guy for his name and his address. He said, it's Christmas time. I'd like to send you a Christmas card. He said, okay. Trump being a big real estate guy in New York, he knew a lot about real estate. He knew how to get things done in real estate. Christmas card came, and Donald Trump said, hey, thanks for changing my tire. Hope your family has a Merry Christmas. And just so you know, I paid off your mortgage. He paid off the guy that had like a $200,000 mortgage. And he said, for 20 years and still counting, he still gets a Christmas card every year from Donald Trump. So that's when nobody was watching. He wasn't doing it for political reasons. So take that to the bank. And, I'm going to vote Trump. It'll be a third time. And I honestly believe he's going to win. He's going to overcome the stuff we got to overcome. I think there's too many eyes watching this time for them to do what they did last time, if you know what I mean. I got demonetized for actually saying what they did. So I'm not going to say it because I could use the $150 every other month I get from YouTube. Helps out a little bit. So God bless. And this is a Catholic channel. I know I got evangelicals watching, but I'm going to say it anyway. Stay Catholic.